What's going on, guys? Zombie Wars here, and welcome back again to another video. And today, we're going to be talking about what if Springtrap is not the killer in Dead by Daylight. Before we get to this video, guys, leave a like on today's video and leave a comment down below. If the killer isn't Springtrap, who would you like to see in Dead by Daylight for the Five Nights at Freddy's chapter? So we have little over a month until Springtrap is revealed, or should I say, possibly Springtrap being revealed in Dead by Daylight. So I wanted to go over that slim possibility that it's not him, and talk about who it could be if it's not Springtrap. Now, before we go forward, I do want to say there is a very high likelihood that Springtrap is going to be the killer. I have a few reasonings for this. The first being that he is the most requested by a landslide for killers for the FNAF chapter. There are, of course, other recommendations people have, but 90% of them that I see are Springtrap. The one I have for myself as well, that being Springtrap. So I think it is the most likely one. I think this chapter is a little too big to experiment with different unexpected characters. So I think this will be a chapter where they pick the most obvious choice, that being Springtrap, Michael Afton, Vanessa, I guess, something like that. I don't think they're gonna do like Music Man and one guy we heard in the books one time or something. I don't think they're gonna do something like that. I also just think that Springtrap fits very well into the game more than any other character in the FNAF series. He's also very easy to build a power around, and also he's one of the few characters in the game that I guess isn't just like a robot programmed to kill, that enjoys being a killer and likes his situation. Not that that's necessarily a requirement. You don't have to enjoy being a killer to be in the realm of Dead by Daylight, but I think more often than not, it lands you more of a chance of being a killer. So, with that said, let's go over a couple characters I have prepared here that could go in the game besides Springtrap. These are based on ideas, fan concepts that I've seen from people that don't want Springtrap, or they think another character besides Springtrap would be better. So the first one is the Mimic. This is the one that I see all the time. This is the one I probably see second the most compared to Springtrap. So the Mimic isn't a bad choice in my opinion, but there is a few reasons why I don't think it would be in the game. I think that it is too soon to add the Mimic in the Dead by Daylight. He didn't really get revealed that long ago in the, Five Nights at Freddy's games. He got introduced earlier in the books, but he was first introduced in the games in Ruin, and now he's finally, or I guess it's getting its own game in Secret of the Mimic. But technically, when you go into the lore, I guess there's other stuff, like the whole glitch trap thing, so I guess FNAF Help Wanted also is a game where the Mimic is an antagonist, kinda. Point is, I think the Mimic as a concept is a little too new to base that on a FNAF chapter when most people want a Springtrap chapter for Dead by Daylight. But there is a few reasons why the Mimic is a good choice. The Mimic is the new villain of the FNAF series. Springtrap is retired. He's not really used anymore. There, of course, is still like Springtrap imagery and like stuff like Glitch Trap that is still involved with William, but is really the Mimic, stuff like that. The Mimic is the one running the show now. We don't really talk about William Afton as the main guy driving the lore at this point. So the Mimic is the main antagonist of the FNAF series. So that would make sense to have him as a villain. But like I said earlier, he is still very new. So I just don't see this happening just because of how new he is. That being said, his game is also coming out around the same time as the DVD chapter. The Secret of the Mimic game comes out June 13th. So it's going to be very, very close with the Dead by Daylight chapter, so maybe there would be some sort of cross thing with that, but that's yet to be seen. That's just another point going towards the Mimic being a potential killer in Dead by Daylight. So the second character is kind of a group of characters. I saw this concept for Dead by Daylight where instead of it just being one killer, it would be the entire 4 animatronics, and you kind of switch between them, and you play as multiple characters in one killer. Sort of like the Legion, I guess, but if you were to actually play as the Legion, like the different members in the trial. I guess technically a better example would have been the twins, because you're literally playing 2 killers. It would basically be the twins, but with 4 instead of 2. I think this one's probably the most unlikely to happen in my opinion for a couple of reasons. I think the style would really clash with Dead by Daylight, having like the giant animatronics running around. I also think having 4 different killers on the same map is a little much, and I think that's really all I have against it, to be honest. I did see people say it wouldn't fit because the animatronics that are possessed by like the missing children's incident aren't really evil, but I disagree because in Dead by Daylight, you don't have to be evil to be a killer. there are multiple killers in Dead by Daylight that are not evil people. There are even some survivors that might have been killers if something else went different in their lives. So just because you're a good person doesn't mean you're a survivor or a killer, and just because you're a bad person doesn't mean that you're a survivor or a killer, but more often than not a killer. So it really depends. We have many killers in the game that haven't even killed anyone when they're alive, like the Spirit and the Artist. I just don't think the rebuttal that the missing children incident animatronics are evil is a good one, because, like I said, there's many non-killers in Dead by Daylight that are killers, and also it could be just easily explained with things like entity magic. The entity can just like brainwash the animatronics to think that the survivors are William Afton or something. It's possible, so I mean, it just doesn't make a lot of sense to say that they wouldn't be killers because they're not actually evil. I also think it would make a lot of sense to have the animatronics as like killer, because it would be like the mascot of the series. I mean, when you think of Five Nights at Freddy's, you think of like Freddy Fazbear, Chica, Bonnie, so it would make sense. For people that aren't into FNAF, I guess they don't inherently know about Springtrap usually, even though Springtrap is objectively the coolest villain ever. Also, if they did the animatronics, let's be real here, Behavior would basically have an infinite skin money making machine. There are so many different skins they can do for the animatronics, especially now that they made it so that you can change the power skins now, which is a huge deal for cosmetics. But no, the animatronics themselves I feel like would provide the most amount of skin variations in the game. And the last one is my personal favorite of the hypotheticals, and that's Ennard. I think it is a possibility. I think more so honestly than the 4 characters, but I think it's a possibility, but I still think it's generally unlikely. I think if anyone has a real chance on this list, I think it would be the Mimic. So I think Ennard would be a good choice for a killer because it is just a cool character to begin with. And they're the main antagonist of a FNAF game, and that's Sister Location. They also appear in different forms in FNAF 6 as Molten Freddy. And I am not too brushed up in my FNAF lore, but I'm pretty sure the Blob is supposed to be Molten Freddy, but over time. So I guess technically that would also make the Blob Ennard. So I think the big thing going for this one is that I've seen very, very few people actually recommend Ennard. I feel like Ennard has kind of past his prime. I feel like most people who really want Ennard are people who are like nostalgic about Sister Location. I feel like most people that are going to get into FNAF now, or just becoming FNAF fans because of the news, I feel like they're not going to care about Ennard in Dead by Daylight because they just don't care about Ennard. Which is a little shame because I like Ennard, but I just feel like Ennard doesn't really have a lot of relevancy anymore in the FNAF series. But before we go any further, Springtrap's definitely going to be a killer. I bet $100 zillion that it's going to be Springtrap. The only one on this list that I think even remotely has a chance at being a killer in Dead by Daylight is the Mimic. I think it's unlikely because of the fact of how new the Mimic is. If the Mimic was a villain in the FNAF games for much longer, I think there would be a bigger chance, but I definitely think with how new the Mimic is, and how many people specifically have been saying Springtrap, I think Springtrap is going to be the choice here. But still, I wanted to talk about the possibility of it being somebody else. But yeah, I don't really have much else to add. These are just some ideas, and I would like to hear what you guys have to think. Is there another character that you think would fit that I didn't mention? I know there was some concept about Nightmare being a killer, as well as Circus Baby, which I don't think those two would come in, but I think they're interesting ideas nonetheless. But yeah, thank you guys so much for watching. I'll see you next video. Peace out.